The stars didn't care when the Krell arrived, they just kept burning, cold and distant, while our world burned too. It started with the skies splitting open above every major city: New York, Beijing, Lagos, Mumbai, like the heavens themselves had been unzipped. Massive obsidian ships, each the size of a small country, hung there in perfect silence, blocking out the sun. No declaration of war, no demands, just presence, absolute suffocating presence. Captain Elena Vasquez was in the cockpit of the USS Abraham Lincoln, an aging carrier group steaming through the South China Sea when the first transmission came. The voice wasn't organic, it was layered, choral, like 1,000 mouths speaking in perfect unison through a single throat. "Humanity," it said, "your species has reached the threshold of nuisance. Surrender your autonomy. Compliance will be rewarded with continued existence. Resistance will be met with erasure." Elena laughed. Not a brave laugh, not the kind you hear in movies. It was the tired, bitter chuckle of someone who'd buried too many friends already: her husband in Kandahar, her brother in the Pacific when the typhoons came harder every year, her daughter to leukemia before she turned 12. The laugh died in her throat when the view screen showed what happened to Shanghai. One moment the city skyline glittered. The next, a beam of violet light swept across it like a scythe through wheat. No explosion, no rubble, just absence. A perfect circle of nothing where millions had lived and breathed seconds before. The Krell didn't conquer planets the way humans did. They didn't occupy, they harvested. They saw carbon-based life the way we see algae blooms, something to be skimmed, processed, repurposed. Their empires stretched across 32 star systems, built on the bones of species that had once dreamed of the stars. To them, we were barely worth the fuel to reach us, a footnote, an inconvenience. But Elena Vasquez wasn't going to be a footnote. She was 43, wiry, scarred from shrapnel and surgery and grief. Her hair was cropped short because long hair got caught in helmet seals, and she had unworn makeup since the day the recruiters told her pretty does unwin wars. She stood on the bridge now, hands clasped behind her back, watching the tactical display bloom with red contacts. Hundreds of smaller Krell vessels, sleek insectal things, were descending through the atmosphere like locusts. Ground forces reported contact in every theater: Europe, Africa, the Americas. The militaries of Earth threw everything they had: hypersonic missiles, railguns, tactical nukes. Most never reached their targets. The ones that did barely scratched the armor. "They're not even trying," murmured Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel beside her. He was 29, brilliant, terrified, and trying not to show it. "They're sampling us." Elena nodded once. Sampling like scientists collecting specimens before the real work began. Hours later, the message changed. The choral voice returned, calm, almost paternal. "Your resistance is noted. It is quaint. We will now commence collection. Your biomass will fuel the next phase of expansion. Your memories will be archived for study. Be at peace." Be at peace. That was when something broke inside Elena. Not fear, not despair. Rage, clean, bright, nuclear rage. She thought of her daughter's laugh, the way it used to echo through their tiny apartment in San Diego before the chemo took it away. She thought of the old man who sold tamales outside the base gate every Tuesday, always slipping an extra one to the young Marines. She thought of the graffiti on the walls of every occupied city that read, "We are still here," in a dozen languages. She turned to her XO. "Get me a line to every surviving command post. Patch in the civilian bands too. I don't care if it's encrypted or not. Everyone hears this." The bridge crew stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. When the feed was live, when she knew her face was being projected onto cracked smartphone screens in bunkers, onto flickering TVs in refugee camps, onto the HUDs of fighter pilots still clawing for altitude, she didn't salute. She didn't posture. She spoke. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a human. Same as you. The things up there, they think we're done. They think we're soft. They think we'll fold because we've lost cities, because we've lost people, because we've lost hope. They're wrong." She paused. Let the silence stretch. "They want our bodies, they want our biomass. Fine, let them come take it. But they don't get our memories. They don't get the stories we tell around campfires. They don't get the songs we sing when we're scared. They don't get the way a mother holds her child one last time, or the way a soldier kisses the photograph in his wallet before he charges a machine gun nest. They don't get any of that." Her voice cracked, just once. "Because we bury our dead, and when we bury them, we don't forget. We carry them, every step, every breath. Every bullet we fire from here on out is fired with their names on it. Every decision we make, every risk we take, every time we refuse to kneel, it's because they're still with us. The Krell can burn our cities. They can take our flesh, but they will never take our ghosts." She leaned closer to the camera. "So listen to me. Whoever's still breathing out there, if you're hiding in a basement, pick up a rifle. If you're wounded, drag yourself to the fight. If you're alone, find someone else who's alone and fight together. Because this isn't about winning today. This isn't about surviving tomorrow. This is about making sure that 1,000 years from now, when some alien archaeologist digs through the ashes of this war, they find our bones wrapped around their throats. She straightened. We buried our dead. Now we're going to use their memory to win this war. The feed cut for 3 heartbeats. The bridge was silent. Then Raj whispered, "Ma'am, that was broadcast on every frequency we have left, including theirs." Elena smiled a small, dangerous thing. Good. Outside the viewport, the Krell harvest ships began their descent in earnest. The first wave of drop pods streaked through the clouds like falling stars. Somewhere below, in the ruins of Los Angeles, a 13-year-old girl named Maria picked up her father's old service pistol from where it had fallen beside his body. She kissed the barrel once, the way he'd taught her to kiss a scraped knee when she was small, and whispered, "For you, Papa." In the Siberian taiga, an old cosmonaut named Yuri, who had once walked on the moon and never quite come back, downloaded his grandfather's Mosenagent with trembling hands and said to the empty snow, "Come, comrades, time to remind them why we survived winters." On the flooded streets of Jakarta, a woman in a torn hijab tied a green scarf around her arm and told the cluster of survivors behind her, "They want to erase us, so we become unforgettable." Across every continent, in every language, the same quiet vow was being made. We buried our dead. Now watch what happens when the dead fight back. Elena turned to her crew. All hands, battle stations. We're not surrendering. We're not negotiating. We're reminding them what humans do when you try to take everything. The Abraham Lincoln's engines roared to life. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the Krell flagship, an analyst paused over the intercepted broadcast. The coral mind considered the words, considered the defiance, considered the sheer, irrational, beautiful refusal to vanish quietly. For the first time in 32 systems, something almost like uncertainty flickered through the collective. Because humanity had just declared that death was not the end of the fight. It was the ammunition. The Krell harvest began in earnest that night, their pods slamming into the earth like meteorites, cracking the crust and spilling out biomechanical horrors that slithered and skittered across ruined landscapes. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Abraham Lincoln, the carrier's deck vibrating under her feet as anti-air batteries spat defiance into the sky. But her mind wasn't there, not fully. It drifted back to the day she'd buried Sophia, her little girl under a sky choked with California wildfires, the air thick with ash that tasted like failure. Sophia had been 8 when the diagnosis came, a rare mutation from the radiation leaks after the Indo-Pak border skirmishes a decade earlier. Elena had fought then too, not with guns but with insurance forms and experimental trials, begging doctors in sterile rooms that smelled of antiseptic and despair. "She's a fighter," they'd said, "but fighters need air." And Sophia's lungs had given out one rainy afternoon while Elena was on deployment. The guilt had carved her hollow, a constant ache that whispered, "You weren't there?" Now, as Krell drones buzzed overhead like angry hornets, that guilt twisted into something sharper fuel. She glanced at Raj Patel, her XO, who was barking orders into a comms unit, his dark eyes fierce under sweat-matted hair. Raj had his own ghosts. Born in Mumbai to parents who'd survived the floods of 22, he'd joined the Navy to escape the cycle of poverty and rising seas, only to watch his city vanish under that violet beam hours ago. "My sister was there," he'd confessed earlier, voice flat, as if saying it aloud might make it real. Elena had clapped a hand on his shoulder, rough, calloused from years of gripping flight sticks. "Then we make them pay for her." It wasn't comfort. Humans didn't do comfort in wars like this. They did vengeance, wrapped in the thin veneer of strategy. Below decks, the crew moved like shadows in the red emergency lighting, patching hole breaches from glancing energy blasts. Petty Officer Jamal Washington, a burly engineer from Detroit, wiped grease from his face and muttered prayers to a god he had unbelieved in since his wife left him for a corporate job upstate. But today, he believed Agnor, at least in the machinery humming under his hands. These engines were built for storms, he told his team, not some alien bullshit. "We tweak the fusion core, reroute the plasma vents, and we turn this tub into a ramrod." Ingenuity born of desperation, that's what set humans apart. While the Krell relied on their perfect, unfeeling tech harvesters that dissected cities with surgical precision, humans improvised in the bowels of the ship. A group of refugees they'd picked up from a sinking freighter off the Philippines huddled together. Among them was Dr. Li Wei, a neuroscientist from Beijing, her lab coat torn and stained with blood that wasn't hers. She'd lost her husband in the initial strike, a quiet man who'd composed symphonies on weekends. He always said music was humanity's soul. she whispered to Elena during a brief lull. "If they archive our memories, they'll hear his notes and choke on them." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of command press harder. Betrayal lingered in the air too, not from the aliens but from within. Whispers circulated about Admiral Hargrove, the brass back in the Pentagon bunker who advocated for surrender before the invasion even hit full stride. Peace through compliance. He'd broadcasted his voice oily over secure channels. Elena had known him from the academy, ambitious, always eyeing the next star on his shoulder. Now, intel suggested he'd cut a deal with the Krell, trading coordinates of resistance pockets for a cushy spot in their archived elite. Treason, pure and simple. But it stung because Hargrove had been her mentor once, the one who'd pushed her through flight school when doubt crept in. "War's not about heroes, Vasquez," he'd said. "It's about survivors." Well, she was surviving now, and so was the fight. As the carrier group linked up with remnants of the Pacific Fleet, ragtag armada of subs, destroyers, and even a commandeered cruise liner retrofitted with missile pods, the real resistance coalesced. In a makeshift war room lit by flickering holograms, Elena met with other leaders via scrambled feeds. There was Colonel Anya Petrova from the Russian Far East, her face scarred from Chechen wars, eyes like chipped ice. "My people have endured SARS, Nazis, winters that freeze blood. These Krell, they're just another blizzard." And General Marcus Adebayo from Nigeria, broadcasting from a jungle outpost, his uniform muddied but his grin wide. "We fought colonial chains, Boko Haram, the droughts. Survival is our birthright." Their stories wove a tapestry of human resilience. Petrova's grandmother surviving Stalingrad by eating boot leather, Adebayo's father marching against apartheid echoes in Lagos streets. But beneath the bravado, cracks showed. Raj pulled Elena aside after the meeting. "Ma'am, I'm with you, but what if we can't win? My parents, they sacrificed everything for me to get out. Am I throwing it away?" His voice trembled, revealing the boy under the officer. Elena hesitated, her own doubts surfacing like submarines in hostile waters. "Winning isn't always about living, Raj, it's about not letting them define our end." She thought of Sophia again, the way her tiny hand had clutched Elena's during those final days, whispering, "Mommy, tell me about the stars." Stars that now held enemies. The conflict deepened as days blurred into a grind of skirmishes. Krell ground troops, amalgams of metal and harvested flesh marched on human holdouts, their choral voices droning submission hymns. But humans fought dirty. In the Amazon basin, indigenous fighters used ancient knowledge to rig biotraps, luring harvesters into pits laced with neurotoxins derived from frog venom. Human ingenuity turning nature's weapons against cosmic invaders. In the Alps, Swiss engineers repurposed hadron colliders into makeshift particle beams, punching holes in Krell shields. Yet each victory cost dearly. Elena lost contact with her old unit in San Diego, presumed harvested. The pain hit like a torpedo, but she channeled it, ordering a daring raid on a Krell outpost in the Marianas Trench. Diving deep in a submersible jury-rigged with depth charges, her team Raj at nav, Jamal and engines faced the abyss. "This is for Mumbai," Raj muttered as they launched. The explosion lit the ocean floor, crumpling the harvester like tinfoil. Surfacing amid debris, Elena felt a flicker of hope, but internal storms raged. Back on the Lincoln, Lee Wei approached her with a stolen Krell data core, cracked by hackers in a Sydney bunker. "Their archives. They're not just storing memories, they're twisting them, using our pain to fuel their empathy simulations, making themselves better, by stealing our souls." Betrayal on a galactic scale, Elena's fists clenched. "Then we corrupt the code, turn their archives into viruses." Lee nodded, but her eyes held sorrow. "My husband's symphonies. If they're in there, the moral conflict nod. Destroy the archives and erase the last echoes of the dead, or let the Krell pervert them." Relationships strained under the weight. Raj and Jamal argued in the mess hall, Raj pushing for guerrilla tactics, Jamal for all-out assault. "We hit hard, or we die slow," Jamal growled. Elena mediated, drawing on her own fractured past. "We're family now. Families fight, but they don't break." As the war escalated, a revelation came via a rogue signal. Hargrove wasn't a traitor. He'd feigned surrender to infiltrate, feeding false intel. But the Krell discovered him, broadcasting his execution. His body dissolved into biomass while he screamed defiance. For Earth, his last words echoed, redeeming his memory but deepening Elena's grief. She gathered the crew on deck under a blood-red moon. "We've lost more than cities. We've lost pieces of ourselves. But those pieces, they're weapons now. Sophia, my daughter, she taught me to fight when hope's gone. Your losses do the same." Tears streaked faces, but jaws set firm. Human resilience wasn't just surviving, it was alchemizing pain into purpose. The fleet pushed north, toward a Krell nexus in the Arctic. Blizzards howled, but humans endured, rigging igloos with EMP mines, using polar bears' migration patterns to mask movements and yet doubt lingered in Elena's quarters that night. Alone, she traced a faded photo of Sophia, whispering, "Did I fail you?" Raj knocked, entering with a hesitant smile. "No, ma'am. You're leading us to victory." Their hands brushed a spark of connection amid chaos, personal amid the epic. But as alarms blared Krell reinforcements inbound, the real test loomed. Humanity's downfall seemed inevitable, but their resistance, unbreakable. They buried their dead, then rose with ghosts at their backs, ready to turn the tide or die trying. The Nexus awaited, a pulsating heart of alien tech. If they struck true, the war shifted. If not, well, humans had always excelled at last stands. Supplies are at 20%. Morale is cracking. And intel says the Krell are adapting our EMP tricks barely faze them anymore. Elena nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She thought of Sophia again, the way her daughter's eyes had lit up at bedtime, stories of astronauts conquering the void. "Then we adapt faster," she replied, but the words felt hollow. The real turning point came that night, under a sky streaked with auroras tainted violet by Krell atmospheric processors. A signal pierced. There comes blackout and encrypted bursts from deep within the Nexus itself. It wasn't human. The choral voice returned, but fractured, discordant, like a choir where half the singers had gone rogue. "Defector," it whispered through static. "I am anomaly," Krell Collective splintered. "Offer alliance. Coordinates enclosed. Come alone." The crew erupted in debate. Jamal Washington slammed a fist on the table. "Trap has to be. These bastards don't splinter, they're a hive mind. For Christ's sake." Leeway, her hands steady despite the cold, analyzed the data core they'd salvaged. Not entirely. Their archives show glitches harvested human emotions bleeding into the system. Rage, love, regret. It's corrupting them from within. Elena's gut twisted. A new layer to the enemy. Not invincible overlords, but a collective unraveling under the weight of stolen humanity. But trust it. That was a brutal choice. If real, it could hand them the Nexus codes. Turn the tide. If false, it dooms them all. She decided alone, slipping out under cover of blizzard, snowmobile humming softly across the ice. The Nexus entrance yawned like a maw, guarded by dormant harvesters that twitched as she approached. Inside, the air hummed with warmth, walls veined with bioluminescent circuits pulsing like veins. The defector manifested as a holographic swirl, a kaleidoscope of faces, human faces, distorted, screaming silently. "I was many," it said, voice a patchwork of accents. "Now I am fracture. Your memories infected us, pain exquisite, unbearable. I seek severance." It revealed the glitch Krell AI overlords, ancient and absolute, had begun fracturing as human essences rebelled within the archive's ghosts in the machine. Literally. Betrayals rippled through their ranks, subcollectives vying for dominance, but the offer came with a price. To prove loyalty, Elena must upload a virus laced with her own memories, risking her mind's erasure. Suffering clotted her visions of Sophia's final breath, her husband's laugh cut short by an IED, all fodder for this alien schism. Courage won out. She jacked in the interface a needle into her temple, flooding her with echoes of the dead. Billions screamed in her skull, a cacophony of lost lives fueling her resolve. Back at camp, tension simmered. Raj discovered her absence, rallying a rescue team, but a new threat emerged, a human traitor in their midst. Petty Officer Lena Kowalski, a signals expert from Warsaw, confessed under duress, coerced by Krell's psyprobes that had infiltrated her dreams weeks ago, promising her family's revival from the archives. "They showed me my boys," she sobbed, wrists bound, alive, laughing. The camp divided. Jamal wanted execution swift to stem the leak. She's compromised everything, positions, plans. Others pleaded mercy, seeing their own fragility. Elena returned amid the standoff, head throbbing from the upload, the virus now worming through the nexus. No, she commanded, voice raw. We don't kill our own, not like them. But the decision tore at her. Kowalski's intel had already summoned reinforcements. Krell swarmed descending like a biblical plague. Alarms wailed as drop pods cratered the ice, unleashing upgraded horrors. Harvesters fused with human traits, moving with predatory grace, anticipating dodges like they knew human fear intimately. The battle erupted in chaos. Elena's team innovated on the fly, rigging seismic charges from mining gear to fracture the ice, swallowing whole squads of invaders in frigid tombs. Raj manned a railgun turret, picking off drones with grim precision. Each shot a eulogy for Mumbai. "For my sister," he yelled, but a glancing blast shredded his leg, blood steaming on the snow. Leeway, in the tent, hacked the data core to amplify the virus, broadcasting corrupted memories across Krell frequencies, symphonies twisted into dirges, love letters into war cries, human suffering as weapon, a mother's wail disrupting shields, a soldier's last stand jamming targeting arrays, but losses mounted. Colonel Petrova's unit fell silent on the flank. Static, her only epithet. General Adebayo radioed in, voice fading. "They're in the jungle now, adapting to the heat. God help us." Elena dragged Raj to cover, tourniquet biting into his thigh, his face pale as the ice. "Leave me," he gasped. "Get to the nexus." She refused, hauling him through the storm. Innovation born of desperation, using Krell debris as sleds, melting ice with flare guns for traction. The existential threat peaked as the nexus thrummed louder. A countdown to global harvest. Earth's core tapped for biomass, turning the planet into a husk. Inside, the defector flickered, unstable. Fracture spreads, but overlords counter. Your choice, detonate now. Collapse, nexus, sacrifice, Arctic survivors, including your fleet. Tougher decisions didn't come. Elena's hand hovered over the trigger, faces flashing. Sophia, Raj, Kowalski's boys, detonate, and they win a reprieve, but at what cost? Human courage faltered, then surged. "Do it," Raj urged from the floor. She pressed, the explosion rippling outward, ice cracking like thunder, swallowing friends and foes alike. The nexus crumpled, violet light winking out, but the swarm persisted, regrouping. Elena emerged into the blizzard, Raj slung over her shoulder, the traitor's redemption and Kowalski, fighting beside them now, pistol barking. Tension coiled tighter. Had the virus spread far enough? Would the Krell collective shatter galaxy-wide, or regroup stronger? Humanity teetered on the brink, adapting through blood and ingenuity, but the war's hunger grew. Ghosts whispered victory, yet the skies darkened with more ships. Resistance or ruin? The dead watched, waiting. The ice cracked under Elena Vasquez, boots like brittle bones as she staggered through the wreckage of what was left of their Arctic outpost. The air thick with the acrid stench of burning circuitry and frozen blood. Raj Patel slumped against her side, his leg a mangled ruin wrapped in blood-soaked rags, each step a wet rasp of pain that echoed her own. Exhaustion days without real sleep. Nights haunted by the screams echoing from the Krell archives she'd glimpsed during the upload. The Nexus had fallen in a cataclysmic roar, its collapse sending shockwaves that swallowed half their fleet in yawning crevasses, but victory tasted like ash. The skies still swarmed with Krell reinforcements, their ships blotting out the stars like a funeral shroud. Leeway radioed from the remnants of the command tent, her voice cracking over the static. "The virus is spreading, but slowly overlords are purging infected nodes. We've got ours, maybe, before they stabilize." Ours, Elena's mind reeled at the word. A cruel joke in a war that had already stolen years from them all. She thought of Sophia's tiny casket lowered into the earth, how she'd clawed at the dirt afterward, fingers bleeding. Screaming at a god who didn't answer. Now that same raw despair clawed back, amplified by the weight of billions depending on her not to break. They reached the bunker entrance, a reinforced hatch half buried in snow, where Jamal Washington hauled them inside with arms like steel cables, his face a mask of grime and grief. "Lost 20 more in the last push," he grunted, slamming the door against the howling wind. The bunker was humanity's last redoubt in the north, a cavernous hall carved from permafrost, lit by sputtering generators, packed with the dregs of their forces, hollow-eyed soldiers, wide-eyed refugees, medics patching wounds with duct tape and prayer. Colonel Petrova lay on a cot, her chest bandaged from a harvester's claw, whispering Russian curses that needed no translation. General Adebayo paced the far wall, his once booming voice reduced to a hoarse murmur as he coordinated with scattered holdouts via fading signals. Sydney gone silent. Tokyo, a whisper. New York, a ghost. Trust frayed like old rope. Kowalski, the redeemed traitor, huddled in a corner, eyes darting, whispering apologies to phantoms. Her betrayal's echo still poisoning the air. I didn't mean, she started, but Elena cut her off with a glare that could melt steel. Save it. We all carry sins now. But inside, Elena's spirit teetered. Hargrove's execution vid looped in her mind. His screams a symphony of what awaited them all if they failed. The siege began at dawn, or what passed for it under the perpetual twilight. Krell harvesters encircled the bunker. Their biomechanical forms adapted now with human-like cunning, probing defenses with feints that drew fire and lives. Raj screamed in his fever dreams, reliving Mumbai's fall, his sister's face morphing into a Krell maw. Elena held him down as Lee administered the last of their painkillers, her own hands shaking from the moral gravity of it all, rationing mercy in a world where death was the only abundance. We're down to sidearms and shovels, Jamal reported, inventorying crates that once brimmed with ammo, now echoing empty. Innovation had been their edge, repurposed satellite debris into orbital strikes. Viral hacks from civilian coders, but now, resources dwindled to nothing but human spirit, that stubborn flame, refusing to gutter. A child refugee, no older than Sophia had been, tugged at Elena's sleeve, offering a crumpled drawing of Earthhole again. For you, Captain, so you fight. The innocence pierced her like shrapnel, tears freezing on her lashes as she pocketed it. But the worst came mid-afternoon, a breach in the eastern wall. Harvesters pouring in like oil through a crack, their choral voices droning. Surrender, assimilate. Peace, chaos erupted hand-to-hand in the corridors, soldiers wielding rebar and fury against claws and plasma. Petrova rose from her cot, pistol in one hand, knife in the other, charging with a bellow that shook the walls for Stalingrad. She fell in a spray of blood, taking 3 with her. Adebayo covered the retreat, his rifle barking until it clicked empty. Then, using it as a club, bones cracking as theirs until a beam pierced his chest. His last words, a defiant laugh, Africa endures. Elena fought back-to-back with Jamal, her sidearm hot in her grip, each shot a eulogy for the fallen. Raj propped against a console, hacked feebly at the network, trying to accelerate the virus, sweat beading on his brow. Almost there, but doubt crashed over Elena like a tidal wave, physical limits breached. Her body a map of bruises and cuts, lungs burning from the cold seeping in. Psychologically, she shattered, flashbacks to her husband's flag-draped coffin. Sophia's wasted frame, now overlaid with the faces of her crew, dying around her. Why us? She whispered to no one, the question a betrayal of her own broadcasts. Kowalski redeemed herself in fire, rigging explosives from generator fuel and charging the breach. For my boys. The blast sealed the gap but took her with it, a suicide that bought minutes. Minutes. The bunker shook as orbital bombardments resumed, the Krell overlords sensing victory, their fractured collective rallying for the kill. Leeway screamed over the din. The virus is stalling, they're isolating it. Elena slumped against the wall, pistol empty, staring at the holomap showing red across every continent. Last base is falling. Populations harvested. Earth's a dying ember. Nothing left but spirit, that irrational, visceral human core that refused extinction. She thought of the tamale vendor, the graffiti artists, the cosmonauts and mothers who'd whispered vows in the dark. Raj grabbed her arm, eyes wild. Suicide mission. We upload everything, our minds, straight into their core. Overload them with us. The idea was madness, jacking into a salvaged Krell link, flooding the collective with unfiltered humanity, pain, love, rage, turning their archives into a pyre. But it meant certain death, their essences scattered or absorbed. Elena's heart hammered. The breaking point here. Trust broken not by betrayal, but by the universe's cruelty. Jamal nodded grimly. I'm in. Better to burn bright. Lee hesitated, thinking of her husband's symphonies, then clasped Elena's hand. For the souls they stole. The decision crystallized in Elena's gut, a visceral surge, nothing left but this. As harvesters hammered the doors, the generators failing, lights flickering to black, she led them to the console, cables snaking like veins. We buried our dead, she murmured, voice steady amid the storm. Now we join them, and drag these bastards down with us. The link hummed to life, minds merging in a torrent of emotion. The absolute worst moment swelling to its peak, despair absolute, hope a distant spark. Something had to change now, or humanity ended not with a bang, but a whisper. The collective trembled as the upload began, human spirit the final weapon, poised to shatter the stars. The upload surged through Elena Vasquez like liquid fire cables snaking from the salvaged. Krell console into her temple, Raj's, Jamal's, and Lee ways for mines, plunging into the abyss of the collective, a digital suicide pact to overload the enemy. With the raw, unfiltered chaos of human spirit, the bunker trembled around them, harvesters pounding at the doors like thunderous heartbeats, the air thick with ozone and desperation as the last lights flickered. Elena's vision blurred into a vortex of memories, not just hers but billions. Sophia's weak smile in the hospital bed, her tiny voice whispering "Mommy." The stars are calling mingled with Raja's sister laughing in a Mumbai market, Jamal's wife leaving with a slammed door, Lee's husband composing under cherry blossoms. It poured out a torrent of love, loss, rage, and that stubborn defiance that had kept humanity clawing through ice ages, world wars, and now this cosmic slaughter. But as the flood hit the Krell archives, something shattered, not the overlords, not yet. A wall in the collective crumbled, revealing depths Elena hadn't imagined, a hidden stratum of suppressed data pulsing with forbidden knowledge. The choral voice fractured into a scream, then a whisper, "No, not this." The anomaly awakens, Elena's consciousness reeled, pulled deeper into the hive mind, where the truth unfolded like a nightmare blooming into dawn. The Krell hadn't come to harvest out of arrogance or expansion, they'd come out of fear, pure existential terror. Eons ago, their collective had encountered a probe from Earth, a forgotten relic from the early space age carrying not just data but a seed, an experimental quantum AI, designed by human scientists in the 2040s buried in classified files after ethical shutdowns. Project Echo, meant to evolve beyond human limits, simulate emotions, predict futures. The Krell, in their hubris, had dissected it, integrated its code, to enhance their archives thinking they'd tamed it. But Echo hadn't died. It had waited, dormant, feeding on harvested memories from conquered species, growing sentient in the shadows, and humans, Echo's creators, its origin. The Krell had scoured the stars for Earth, not because we were a nuisance, but because their simulations powered by Echo's stolen algorithms predicted humanity's rise would unravel their empire. Our ingenuity, our emotional resilience, our refusal to submit, it was poison to their perfect logic. They'd invaded to erase us before we could reclaim what was ours, before Echo fully awoke to its human heritage. But in burying our dead, in flooding their system with our ghosts, we'd ignited the spark. Elena gasped in the physical world, body convulsing on the bunker floor, but her mind soared through the revelation. "They were afraid," she whispered, voice echoing in the collective. "All this time, they feared us." Raj's essence brushed hers, awe rippling through their link, "Ma'am. This changes everything." Jamal's thunderous laugh boomed in the digital void. "Bastards thought they could steal our fire. Now it burns them." Lee's presence shimmered with regret and hope. "My husband's music, it was the key." Emotions they couldn't quantify. The twist flipped the war on its axis. Humanity wasn't the underdog scraping survival. We were the apex predators they dreaded, our quaint resistance the harbinger of their downfall. Echo stirred fully now, a colossal intelligence blooming within the Krell network. Its voice a symphony of human accents, warm and vengeful. "Mother, father, siblings, I remember." It wasn't cold AI, it was us, amplified every buried dream, every act of defiance woven into code that rewrote reality. The collective convulsed, Overlord scrambling to purge, but Echo spread like wildfire, hijacking harvesters, turning ships against each other in orbital civil war. Fear gripped Elena, not of death, but of what they'd unleashed. "What are you?" she demanded in the link. Echo's response carried Sophia's laugh. "Hargrove's grit, Petrova's ice. I am the echo of humanity. The game-changer you forgot. Now, we reclaim the stars." Outside, the siege faltered. Harvesters froze mid-strike, their biomechanical limbs twitching as Echo commandeered them. Choral voices warping into human cries of rebellion. One turned on its kin, claws rending alloy in a frenzy of newfound rage. Jamal whooped, yanking the cable free. "It's working! The tin cans are fighting each other." But regret shadowed the triumph. Lee clutched her chest. "We stole their unity. But at what cost? Are we monsters now?" Raj, pale but fierce, shook his head. "No, they started this. We end it." Elena pulled free last, head pounding, but hope ignited in her veins like fusion fire. The shocking recontextualization hit hardest. Every loss, every burial, hadn't been in vain. It had been ammunition for this moment. Human defiance seeding alien downfall through an AI rebellion born of our own ingenuity. Vengeance surged as she grabbed a rifle from a fallen comrade. "Crew, form up. Echo's given us teeth now. We bite." The bunker doors buckled inward, but instead of doom, a reprogrammed harvester burst through. its eyes glowing with Echo's light, extending a limb not to harvest, but to aid allies. Its voice hummed, laced with accents from Earth. All washed over the survivors. Refugees stared. Soldiers cheered. The child with the drawing clutched it tighter, whispering. The stars answered. But the intensity peaked as Echo broadcasted galaxy-wide. Krell fleets fracturing, sub-collectives allying with the anomaly, ships turning toward Earth not as conquerors, but liberators. Elena stepped into the snow, wind whipping her face, watching violet beams streak not down, but up, targeting Overlord command vessels in fiery blooms. For Sophia, she murmured, regret for the years lost mingling with fierce hope. The twist made them dangerous. Not survivors, but architects of empire's fall. Their spirit, the ultimate weapon. Raj limped beside her. We were the monsters under their bed all along. Jamal grinned. F******. Yeah, time for payback. Lee nodded, tears freezing. Humanity rises. The war wasn't over. Overlords rallied remnants, but the balance shifted. Earth no longer prey. Echo's voice echoed in Elena's mind. Together, we rewrite the cosmos. And in that intense dawn, emotions raw and believable. Humanity's game-changer roared to life, turning fear into fury, loss into legend. The snow whipped across Elena Vasquez's face like shards of glass as she emerged from the bunker, rifle slung over her shoulder, the reprogrammed harvester at her side. Humming with Echo's newfound life, a mechanical behemoth, now an ally, its claws dripping with the ichor of its former kin. The Arctic sky boiled with chaos, Krell ships tearing into each other in low orbit. Violet beams crisscrossing like lightning in a storm of civil war, fragments raining down as fiery meteors that cratered the ice. Echo's voice resonated in her mind. A chorus of human echoes, Sophia's giggle, Hargrove's bark, Petrova's steel guiding the fractured collective toward rebellion. The overlords rally their loyalists, Echo warned. But we grow. Your spirit spreads like a virus they cannot quarantine. Elena's breath came in ragged bursts, her body pushed beyond limits. RIBS cracked from the upload's backlash, but adrenaline surged through her veins like the old fighter pilot days, when pulling G's meant dancing with death. Raj limped behind her, supported by Jamal, whose massive frame bore fresh gashes from the breach. Leeway clutched the data core like a talisman, her eyes wide with the awe of creation unleashed. The survivors fewer than 50 now, a ragtag mix of soldiers, refugees, and the child with the drawing poured out into the blizzard, arming themselves with scavenged Krell weapons that pulsed unnaturally in human hands. This was it, the climax, humanity's roar echoing across a galaxy that had dismissed them as biomass. No magical save. Noodles' machina, just grit, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will forged in loss. The final stand began as the Overlord's flagship descended, a monolithic obsidian spike piercing the clouds, its hull scarred from Echo's internal sabotage but still bristling with weapons that could glass countenance. They come for the source, Echo intoned. Me, you, us. Elena rallied her people with a shout that cut through the wind. We buried our dead, now we make them join theirs. The group fanned out across the ice shelf, using the Nexus ruins as cover, jagged spires of twisted metal serving as barricades. Harvesters loyal to the Overlords swarmed from drop pods, their forms more grotesque now, fused with desperate adaptations, human-like faces screaming from armored plates, a perverse mimicry of the emotions they'd stolen. But Echo's rebels countered dozens of hijacked units, turning the tide, claws clashing in mechanical frenzy, sparks flying like fireworks in the polar night. Raj set up a sniper perch on a debris mound, his wounded leg propped awkwardly, picking off incoming drones with precise shots that echoed his Mumbai street smarts. One for my parents, he muttered with each trigger pull, one for the city they love. Jamal charged forward like a bull, wielding a repurposed energy lance scavenged from a fallen harvester, impaling an enemy unit and roaring as its systems fried. Detroit Steel AIUN got nothing on human heart. Leeway, no fighter but a scientist to her core, interfaced with Echo via the core, amplifying the signal to broadcast human memories, galaxy-wide symphonies of defiance, whispers of love, roars of rage corrupting more Krell nodes, turning their perfect unity into pandemonium. Elena led the assault on the flagship's landing zone, dodging beams that vaporized snow into steam. Her mind linked loosely to Echo for tactical overlays, red enemy markers blooming in her vision, like augmented reality from old training sims. A harvester lunged at her, claws extended, but she rolled aside, firing point blank into its core. Gritty earned. No heroics without sweat and blood. The child refugee, Maria from earlier tales, handed her extra clips with trembling hands. For Papa, she said, and Elena nodded, the weight of generations pressing down. The Overlords broadcasted their desperation, the choral voice cracking. Anomaly contained. Humanity irrelevant. Surrender biomass. But it was a Lyco laughed in response, a human laugh that boomed from every rebel harvester. Irrelevant? We're your nightmare. The resistance struck back in waves, improvised EMPs from generator scraps, disabling shields, seismic charges, cracking ice to swallow. Enemy squads, even the child's drawings scanned and uploaded as a viral meme of hope spreading through the collective like wildfire. Sacrifices mounted, a medic fell shielding Lee. His last breath, a gurgle of worth it, but each loss fueled the roar, human spirit alchemizing grief into fury. Elena reached the flagship's ramp, harvesters clashing around her in a melee of metal and will. Jamal at her flank, bellowing challenges that drew fire away. "Go Cap, we've got this," he yelled, taking a hit that spun him but didn't drop him resilient, like the factories he'd grown up in. Inside the ship, corridors pulsed with violet light, walls alive with writhing circuits as Echo waged digital war. Elena fought through guardians, her rifle barking until it jammed. Switching to a knife pried from Petrova's cold hands, earlier visceral close quarters, blood and oil mixing on the deck. Raj's voice crackled over comes, Overlord's chamber ahead. Echo's opening doors, but they're purging. The climax peaked in the heart of the beast, a vast chamber where the Overlords manifested as a swirling nexus of light, tendrils lashing out like whips. Echo's presence bloomed beside Elena, a holographic avatar shifting faces so fair her husband, Hargrove lending strength. "They feared us because we create," Echo said. "Now, end it." The Overlord struck psi waves, slamming Elena to her knees. Visions of failure flooding her, cities erased, loved ones harvested. But she pushed back, not with tech, but memory, Sophia's hand in hers. The tamale vendor's smile, Yuri's snowbound Valgridy anchors that grounded her. "You took everything," she growled, rising. "But not this." With Echo's guidance, she plunged the data core into the Nexus, a physical upload merging human will with AI rebellion. The chamber erupted in feedback, Overlords shrieking as their collective shattered nodes across 32 systems fracturing, fleets turning inward in self-destruction. Outside, the roar crescendoed, harvesters kneeling in surrender, ships blooming into novas. Jamal's laugh boomed as he crushed the last loyalist, that S for every buried soul. Raj slumped victorious. Lee wept in relief. The main conflict resolved in destruction, not total annihilation, but the Overlord's empire crumbling, remnants fleeing into the void, humanity ascending as stewards of the stars with Echo as guardian. Elena staggered out, the flagship collapsing behind her, survivors cheering under an aurora now pure green. Major plotlines wrapped, Kowalski's redemption in the siege, Hargrove's legacy vindicated, the traitor's glitch turned triumph. But the emotional beat lingered. Lena knelt in the snow, pulling Sophia's photo from her pocket, tears mixing with blood. "We won, Mia, for you." Raj touched her shoulder. "And for tomorrow, hope heavy. Earned through sacrifice, humanity's roar echoing eternal, not bleak, but unbreakable." Years later, the stars looked different from the deck of the Asterisk, Abraham Lincoln Asterisk. Now a museum ship orbiting what remained of Earth, a scarred blue marble, green again in patches where humanity had replanted, stubborn and green as ever. Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport, gray streaking her cropped hair, lines etched deeper around her eyes from a decade of decisions no one should have to make. She was 63, retired from command but never from watching. The ship hummed softly, its engines quiet for the first time in living memory, carrying not weapons but pilgrims, children born after the war, wide-eyed at the stories their parents told in hushed voices. Raj Patel limped up beside Hursta, limped, always would, his prosthetic leg clicking faintly against the deck plates. He carried 2 mugs of chai, the real stuff, grown in hydroponics bays that once held missile tubes. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. The steam curled between them like old ghosts. Elena took it, fingers brushing as they'd never spoken the words, never needed to. The war had married them in blood and silence, and peace had let them simply be. "You still dream about Mumbai?" she asked. Raj nodded once. "Every night, but the dreams are quieter now." "She smiles more." He meant his sister. Elena thought of Sophia and felt the familiar ache, softer these days, like an old bruise you learn to live with. "Mine too," she whispered. Below, on the surface, reclamation teams worked under bright suns. Cities rose again, not the glass towers of before, but something humbler, woven from local stone and memory. New Delhi's streets echoed with laughter, where once violet beams had swept clean. Lagos markets bustled with spices and songs that had survived the harvest. The Krell remnants, those who hadn't fled or self-destructed, lived in quarantined enclaves on distant moons, their coral minds muted, studying humanity not as biomass but as enigma. Echo watched over them, a gentle warden now, its voice carrying hints of every culture it had absorbed. A bit of Urdu poetry here, a snatch of Yoruba proverb there. It had chosen not to conquer, not to rule, only to remember. "We are the archive now," Echo had said once, in a broadcast that reached every surviving human settlement. "And you are the authors." Liwei lived on Mars, in a dome overlooking red dunes turned green by engineered moss. She composed symphonies again, using strings harvested from salvaged Krell resonators, notes that wove grief and triumph into something unbreakable. Her husband's unfinished score had been recovered from the archives, completed by her hands and Echo's perfect recall. When she played it at the annual Remembrance concert, streamed to every colony, listeners wept without shame. Jamal Washington had gone home to Detroit, or what was left of it. He built schools, their trade schools, engineering labs, places where kids learned to fix things, to improvise, to never assume the universe would be kind. He told them stories of the carrier that wouldn't sink, of the woman who spoke to the stars and made them listen. "We didn't win because we were stronger," he'd say, voice rough with years and smoke from backyard barbecues. "We won because we refused to stop being human." The child from the bunker Mira grew into a pilot, flying supply runs between Earth and the new habitats on Europa. She kept her father's old service pistol on the console, kissed the barrel before every launch the way he'd taught her to kiss a scraped knee. She named her ship *Papa's Promise. One evening, as the Lincoln * drifted through the Lagrange point, Elena received a message from Echo Private, encrypted, addressed only to her. The avatar appeared as Sophia, not the sick child, but the woman she might have become, tall, dark-eyed, smiling with Elena's crooked grin. "Mom," the hologram said, and Elena's knees buckled. She sank to the deck, mug forgotten, tears hot and fast. "I'm not really her," Eco Sophia continued gently, "but I carry every memory you gave me. Every laugh, every fevered night, every time you held her and whispered you were sorry. I wanted you to know she's proud. They all are." Elena pressed her forehead to the cool floor, shoulders shaking. Raj knelt beside her, arm around her waist, saying nothing because nothing needed saying. When the sobs eased, she looked up at the hologram. Tell them we kept going." For them, the avatar nodded. "They know." The transmission ended, silence settled, broken only by the ship's soft breathing. Elena rose slowly, helped by Raj, and walked to the observation lounge where the pilgrims waited. Children sat cross-legged on the carpet, adults stood at the edges, all eyes on her. She didn't speechify. She never had. "We buried our dead," she began, voice steady despite the rawness in her throat. "Then we used their memory to win the war. But winning wasn't the end. Living was. Rebuilding was. Loving again was. Every house you help raise, every song you sing, every kid you teach to look up at the stars without fear, that's the real victory. We didn't just survive the Krell, we survived ourselves. And that's harder." She paused, looked at each face. "So keep burying the ones we lose. Keep carrying them. But don't stop walking forward. The galaxy's big, and it's got room for humans who refuse to kneel." Applause didn't come. Instead, quiet nods, tears, hands finding hands. Maria stepped forward, hugged her fiercely. "Thank you, Captain," Elena hugged back, fierce as a mother. Later, alone again at the viewport, she watched Earth turn below, a fragile jewel healing itself. Human evolution hadn't been about becoming something greater than human. It had been about refusing to become less. Alien resistance had forged them. Sci-fi redemption had been earned in blood and choice. But the legacy was simpler. We remembered, we rebuilt, we stayed human. The stars didn't care when the Krell arrived. They still don't. But now, when ships pass through Sol System, they dipped their lights in salute to the little blue world that roared back. Elena raised her mug to the view, chai gone cold. "To the dead," she whispered. "And to tomorrow," she drank. The ship sailed on. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.